Good morning, everybody, and I'm chatting today again with Robert Lindsay Milne, all the way from Canada, and just catching up with Robert on a very casual conversation today and getting to know him a little more. So, hi, Robert.
How you doing today? It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here, and in our part of the world, we're coming to near the end of autumn, and so the days are getting shorter and shorter, and the nights are getting longer and longer, and colder and colder.
Especially in Canada.
Yes, we have had our climate has been moderated a lot over the last several years. Often we're not as cold as what it used to be. When I was a boy, we by this time we would have minus 20 temperatures and snow. We don't have that right now, and we haven't had really snowy winters for a fairly long time. Every now and again we get the worst one in the last 150 years, and then we go a couple of years with a few little snowflakes.
Well, they keep on telling us about climate change, but here we are practically in summer, and yet we just had snow about a week ago on the mountain.
No kidding. No kidding. So, well, and the opposite here in our far north, the ice is breaking. The Arctic shield is breaking, and all these big icebergs are floating away, like icebergs big as an island, and that are and the icebergs are melting. There's a place in British Columbia called the Columbian Ice Fields, and it is set up for tourists, and you get in this specially made bus, and they drive you out onto the glacier, and you can get to walk around the glacier and stuff, and drink the water running through the glacier. It's been melting for, maybe the glacier has been, I don't know, 1,000,000 years old, whenever that ice age was. And when I first went there, so that would have been, say, in the late 1970s, the ice was like right up to the shed where you got on the bus. And the next time I went, which was about 20 years later, the ice had melted about 100 meters.
Wow. So we have glacier country not far from where I am. And what's so amazing about this little ski village is the children that go to the school have the most extraordinary lessons. So when they did glacial study in geography, they got to just go and have a little tramp around the glacier. And then when they were doing physical education, they go up all these rock faces, and the kayaks are there on the lake. They go right up these 100-feet trees, and it's such real on-hand learning. Don't you think today, though, that compared to when we were at school, it almost seems like the education's getting a little bit dumbed down? There's a different kind of education. It's sort of more mollycoddled, and they don't seem to have that same resilience. Just something, I don't know if you noticed that with your readings.
So my thinking on that is, because of technology and because of all the inventions that that make our life easier, more convenient, what's happening is the kids aren't learning the fundamentals. So they know how to add and subtract on an adding machine or a computer, but they don't know how to add and subtract in their head or to count. They're not learning the fundamentals of doing things because they're starting off with it already made. Well, if there's ever a problem with our electric grid, or if there's ever some catastrophe, with the skills that the younger generation have, they may not make it.
And how will they communicate? Because all they do is communicate with their machines.
Well, that's correct. They're losing the fundamentals. So I'm the type of person although I've always been a professional psychic, it's been my job. I've always had obsessive avocations. I've always been involved in something really intensely, and one of them was baking, and
baking.
Oh yeah, and there was one time, and when I get interested in something, I just have to do it to the extreme. And so when I get interested in something, I also just happen to bump into somebody who is, the world's expert in the subject that that just happens all just as a coincidence, right? So I wanted to be a good stepfather, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I thought if I could learn to cook, or maybe even bake cookies or something. And my partner at the time, she at Christmas, she gave me a gift certificate to a cooking school. And I liked that. It was like a 6-week course, and I liked that. But the class that I liked the most was the class where we learned how to make pastry. And I got really fascinated with that part. And so I decided that I was going to learn to bake. And by the time I finished learning to bake, I was entering into competitions and winning. And I also got to the point where I was able to judge. I went to judging school.
Or because of a Christmas gift certificate.
All because I wanted to be a good stepfather. And when I was baking in those days, I would bake in the morning, and I would every morning and every evening. And I didn't just bake a pie. If I was making pies in the morning, I'd make 4, or if I was baking cakes or stuff like that. And I got to the point where I could pretty much make anything without a recipe. I could just do it. And so anyway, the point that I was making, though, is when I started to learn to bake, and especially with pastry, what I decided to do is do it the absolutely old-fashioned way. So the old-fashioned way is you have your ingredients, you put your ingredients together, and you do it all with your hands. And you do everything with your hands. And I started like that. And from there, once I got to the point where I could do everything by hand with no tools, the hardest way, like my great-grandmother or my grandmother would have done. When I got to that point, I then started cutting corners a little bit. But I had to make sure that I was doing the fundamentals so that I would always be good at making that pastry. And that's also the way I think when it comes to my psychic ability as well. Learn the fundamentals, understand the fundamentals of things, and then build on top of that. So that was my thinking.
So when you talk about fundamentals,
mm-hmm.
the psychic ability,
mm-hmm.
Tell us a bit about that. What does that entail? What makes a good psychic, as opposed to just a charlatan or anybody else that just doesn't sort of hit the mark?
Okay, so I'd like to address the charlatan part first. Okay, and that often it does come up in my lifetime, and I've been around for a fairly long time, and I have met a lot of psychics and a lot of people that do this work a lot more recently, but I've come across many. I have met very few charlatans. Very few. Most people that do this work honestly believe they are making a contribution, that they're helping people. Just about everybody I've met. They believe they have a calling. They believe they're doing a good service. That doesn't mean they're good at it. So not everybody, plays in the NHL, the National Hockey League. Not everybody plays not everybody gets to the Olympics. Not everybody is great. There's far more mediocre or less in any field than there are great. So in this field, often if you do a lousy job, if you have a bad day, do a bad reading, what you say is, oh, that Robert Lindsay Milne's just a fraud, a charlatan. Okay, so but I'm not that. But I could have been called that because on a bad day. So, and we all have that. In most professions, if you have a bad day, if you're a carpenter or something, if you do a bad job, they often say, well, hey, come on back and fix it. Well, we get called charlatans.
Yeah,
there are some people that are thieves, and they happen to use this shtick for their thievery, but they're far and few between.
So
there are some that are really lousy at it.
Yeah.
Okay. There's some that have no experience and call themselves something. They give themselves some great exotic title, but they're still not charlatans.
So would those people who'd been read by the people that are not so good, would they be able to say, actually, I would like my money back because you didn't get anything accurate? What happens in a case like that?
When someone says that to me?
No. Do you know, obviously everybody's...
most people I know, when they do a reading and you pays your money, that's the deal. You don't get your money back.
But if you were a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter,
you would have the opportunity to fix your work.
The people would say, well, that you didn't do it, so come back and sort it out. Right.
Now, for me personally, if I don't really get to that point very often where somebody would ask for their money back, and one of the reasons for that is that I'm so cautious that if I think I'm not doing a very good job, I just stop and apologize, or if there's ever any issue whatsoever, just give them back their money. It's so much easier.
So do you ever, or have you ever had somebody that you haven't been able to read?
Oh, all the time.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely.
So what is that? Tell me about that. How does that work?
It is numerologically impossible for one person to do good readings for every person that they meet. You can't. Now, you just can't. You just can't. You cannot relate to absolutely everybody. There is at least 25% of the world's population that you have absolutely nothing in common with. So on a broader scale than just that, it's we as human beings can only relate to a certain amount of people. So let's take the whole world's population. I think it's around 7 billion. But because of the numbers, I'm not very good at math. So let's just pretend that there's 6 billion because it's easier for me to calculate. Okay. So let's pretend that there's 6 billion people on the planet, but we know there's 7. Okay. So, and we line up those 6 billion people, but really 7, shoulder to shoulder, stretch them all out. At one end of that spectrum of 6 billion people, 25% of them, which is like what, 2.5 billion, hate your guts. Absolutely hate your guts. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
They will hate you if you try to do something about it, and they'll hate you if you don't. There's just nothing you can do about it. So now we go to the other end of the spectrum. There's another 2.5 billion, 25% of the world's population, and they love you. I mean, like they adore you. They have your back. You're okay. They treasure you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Isn't that life?
Well, just come on. Yes. Now listen, that's right. Now, and they will like you. Now, between this 2.5 billion and this 2.5 billion, there's another 3 billion that go from the good side to the dark side. You have free choice and free will to deal with and interact with it, whatever part of those billions you want. You can deal with the ones that hate your guts and you can try to convert them, or you can deal with the ones that love you and adore you and treasure them and treasure you, and then you can help them along. There's only so many people that you can deal with.
Okay.
And whatever that 2.5 billion that hate me aren't necessarily the 2.5 billion that would hate you.
Yeah.
The same as the 2.5 billion that love me, they wouldn't necessarily love you. It'd be a different group, right?
No,
It'd be a different combination. Mm-hmm.
So being human the way we are,
yes,
we love comparisons, things like that. So when I had my reading with you, obviously I discussed it with 2 or 3 close friends. And some of them also had readings with you. And they discussed their readings with me. Now, one of them had a conversation with me 2 days ago and said that after her reading with you,
what?
After her reading with you, she sort of, filtered the information, and she actually ended up, you told her that her structure wasn't aligned. Her actual physical structure.
Her structure?
Her structure, right? She ended up, she's been having a problem with her shoulder for about 5 months, and they thought it was a rotor cuff. And she just thought, oh, it's just not getting better. It's not getting better. She ended up, I think, just last week going to see an osteo or something who did an MRI and a scan and found out that she's actually got a broken bone. So her structure is not
it's broken, yeah. Yeah.
Now, Robert.
Yes.
That gave me such, her broken bone made me happy because the information that you gave me was so fabulous that you sort of say, oh, I want to believe that. But then
yes,
you give a reading to somebody else, and at the time they go, oh, what does this really mean? And then they find out what it means. Then it makes me thrilled because I'm thinking, wow, if he managed to see that.
Right, maybe what he's saying for me is correct.
Is actually is going to come right, is going to be the real deal. Yeah. And I think that's human nature, isn't it?
Of course.
And that's how somebody gets a reputation, by having those validations. So the same person,
Okay.
as she was chatting to me, I started seeing visions. I was shown, I see it like pictures in my mind, like a video playing or like a trailer.
Yes. Okay.
So I said to her, look, this is what I'm seeing. Now, I've only done that once before with my
Really?
sister,
Okay.
and she said to me, could you just repeat all that you've just said to me? I said, no, I can't. I can't, because I didn't know what I'd said. It was just flowing.
Sure.
Right? So with my friend, the same thing happened. And I said to her, oh, wow, now that I wish I could do. Then I would be a real clairvoyant, because the readings that I've done over the years, I sit in front of the computer and I just say, what is it that Robert needs to know at this time of his life? And then I just start writing. I don't
Do you
even
actually ask that question?
do I?
Do you
Yes.
actually say that, or is
Yes.
that your way, or is that your way of explaining it? Because like I often use that way of explaining it, and I really don't do that at all. I just turn the switch, right? But then when I describe it, I'll say, "Oh, I asked myself that question. That's how I got the answer." I was just wondering if that's how you were. I'm not. I was just wondering if you were thinking that way. That's all.
No, I just say, I sit in front of the
You
computer,
do, right?
or
Okay.
with a notepad, a
Yeah.
pad and a pen. And
Yeah.
I will say, what is it that so-and-so needs to know at this time? Because I know within 2 weeks' time it might be different again. And I know that spirit knows what it is that that person requires, the knowledge at this time. So I don't like it when people say to me, am I getting married to Joseph? Or, am I going to move to Seattle? I personally don't like those, I suppose, because I've always doubted myself, although when people have asked me that, I have given them the information. So to be able to do this just the other day, I thought to myself, isn't that strange how we do it in different ways? That maybe the way you do it and the way that I do it, although it's different, it might just work for us. So there might not be a wrong way or a right way to get the information.
Absolutely. And my feeling is as long as it, the method is positive and healthy and for goodwill, what does it matter how you get to it? In our work, we don't have to prove our process like a mathematician does. Like in a math problem, you don't get all the points just because you have the answer. You also get points for knowing, but not in our business. We get points for the answer. So how you get to it doesn't matter. That you got to it is what the issue is.
And
so closies only happen in horseshoes, and in our business, in that case, only ringers count.
So when I yes.
Doesn't matter if you throw it over your head, around your back, do a hook shot. The ringer, okay, you did it right. That's the answer. So that's why. Huh?
For me, it's like, I see people saying, okay, I've got to bow 3 times to the west, 3 times to the east, turn around.
Oh, yeah. Cut it out. Just do it.
But if that works for them, that's fine. And you know what my guides told me? They said, listen, let's tell you it like this. There are different ways to eat a banana. You can just eat it and eat it with your fingers, or you can eat it with a knife and fork. It doesn't really matter as long as you get the nutrients that the banana delivers.
Absolutely. Doesn't matter, just as long as you're eating the banana, do it. And I feel that way. So there's no one method better than the other. I've never really used a medium per se, and for a long time I thought I was some hotshot because I didn't. I'm at the point where I believe what I just said now. It's irrelevant what got you to the point. In our businesses, you got the point. You got to the point. That's what we're paid for. Right? And you're correct. That's what we get paid for, not how we do it.
Yeah.
And that's and because when someone's coming to us and they are in trouble, they don't care how we get to it. They just want to know that we got to it. So that being recognizing that we all get to it differently, it's also really important to be open-minded with others and in how they get to it, because everyone's going to be doing it differently. One of the hardest things to do for me is when someone's giving me feedback and I'm thinking, oh shit, here it comes, look out, and that was what I was going through with you right now, when you were telling me about your friends, and I'm thinking, oh God, oh please. And so
she's gonna embarrass me in front of everybody.
Are you gonna do this? Oh no, please.
Why do we always go there first?
We just do. All right. Now, incidentally, the way I've handled that throughout my life is I've got this philosophy. When you're getting run out of town, get to the front of the line and make everyone think it's a parade. So I was thinking about how I was going to be able to get out of this, with all cheers and stuff. So, but fortunately, I didn't have to. There are some times where I'll be sitting in front of somebody and I'll be looking at them and I'll be thinking to myself, what the hell am I going to say to this person?
Yeah.
Or I'm doing a call-in show and like, what the hell am I gonna say? That's what and then I just say whatever comes into my mind.
So do you see pictures or do you just get those?
I ideas, words. It just comes like that. And I don't even see the words. It's I know. And sometimes I know so clearly what I do actually is slow down and break up the way I say things. I do that on purpose so that it doesn't, so the way it comes out doesn't sound too contrived. I deliberately do that.
Wow. Wow, that's so interesting. And Robert, would you like to tell the audience about the lady that came to see you? The one whose husband was in the coma.
Oh, yeah. Or they could listen to that on the first time. Did I talk about that on the first show? Oh, I didn't?
We didn't
because okay.
Yeah.
Well, that one, certainly has been the most, the biggest one, but not necessarily the greatest one. And the biggest one, as in it got the most amount of world attention. But there have been others equally, but as profound and as deep. So I have, after being on the job for like 56 years, I have a lot of long-term clients. Well, you should have that lot of long-term clients, but these one couple, I can tell you the people's names because she wrote a book and her names are in the book. And her name is Stephanie Strathdee. She's a Toronto woman, and she came to me and got her very first reading when she had just finished her doctorate degree in epidemiology from the University of Toronto. She came to me for a reading. That would have been 30 years ago. Anyway, maybe a little longer. So I liked her very much. We had a nice connection. And she went off into the United States and became this famous epidemiologist. And right now, she is professor of epidemiology at the University of Southern California, and she's associate dean of the Department of Epidemiology. And she's got like a million other titles, and like you read this and you think, wow, like this is incredible. Her husband Tom is a professor of experimental psychology and has a PhD in psychiatry, and he's a professor at the University of Southern California, and he's also associate dean of the experimental psychology department. So again, they're heavyweights. Stephanie and Tom, I can tell you everything freely because it's in the book. Like, I'm not betraying. I have to really keep saying that. So Stephanie and Tom are very, very well known people in their industries. It's their second marriage, and Tom is considerably older than Stephanie, but he can hold his own with Stephanie and vice versa. So and Tom is a great big guy, like 6'5", and he's a rugged, macho kind of guy. He's like an Indiana Jones. So if you think of an aging Indiana Jones, but he's that kind of guy. He did some research in South America some way, where got captured by the Sandinistas, just about starved to death in the prison camps. And he's done all these kinds of things in his life. Anyway, but in later life, Tom ballooned up to way over 300 pounds. These two people were my clients. Tom and Stephanie were planning one of their dream vacations. They always had dream vacations. And this one was going to Egypt. And they wanted to so they go to Egypt on their dream vacation. And about a year before Tom went on that vacation, I did a reading for him. And now my technique with giving people bad news is I tell them the positive side of what's going to happen before I tell them the negative side. Okay. So, what I do is I look into the future and I see the results of what this calamity or whatever it is that they're going to go through. And I tell them about that. And then I come back to today, and then I introduce the subject gently. And I don't even do it. And I introduce it and then change the subject, and then I come back to it and give a little bit more. And my job is not to scare the shit out of people. My job is to prepare people so that they will have the choice, how to deal with it, and at very least know that they'll get through it and they'll have tools.
So like the street lights on a dark country road. I do. So I like that. That's a nice way to say it. I like to do that. So I said to him, Tom, by such and such a time, you are going to be more than 100 pounds lighter, and you're going to look great, and you're going to love the way your body moves and everything. He said, oh, that's really good. So then, a couple of minutes later, and I said, there's an illness coming, and you're going to get as sick as you possibly can get without dying. And then you're going to lose more than 100 pounds. And then I said, the way I'm seeing this, though, is the end result is you lose the 100 pounds. So if what I've said to you today has scared the hell out of you and you lose 100 pounds, I'm betting you don't get sick. Or you can get sick as you possibly can be without dying and then lose 100 pounds.
And I just said, Tom, it's up to you. You can do it the easy way or the hard way. And that's how I presented it to him. And that's written in the book too, by the way. So it's what I said, frightened him for a week, and he lived on salads for about a week, and that stopped. And then anyway, they go away on their vacation and they're touring one of the pyramids. Tom gets sick that day, but goes to the pyramids anyway. Well, he wasn't feeling very well on the plane ride over. And this would have been like late November, early December of that year, even mid-December. And while he's touring one of the pyramids, he gets really, really sick, faints, passes out, and they carry him out of the pyramid. They take him back to the hotel. The doctor comes to see him. The doctor's really worried about Tom. He's somewhat delirious and sick. And then they take him to the hospital. What was going on was an infection somewhere around his pancreas. And the way they describe it, they call it a pseudocyst. I don't know what the hell that is. Anyway, something like that. So while in the hospital in Egypt, Tom contracts the most powerful, at the time, the most powerful superbug on the planet. It was 100% antibiotic resistant.
Wow.
That means when you get it, you die. So Tom and Stephanie get medevaced from Egypt to Germany. And it just turns out, by good luck, they end up going to a clinic in Germany, and the emergency clinic just happened to be experts in dealing with superviruses. But nobody can cure this because it won't. Anyway, Tom's in isolation. He's in a coma. And everybody around was wearing hazmat suits and things like that. So about a week before Christmas, when it was starting, I came down with, I don't know what, the flu, a cold, something just awful. And I was laying in bed all day. And then about 2 days before Christmas, the Skype phone rang. And I crawled out of bed and I sat down, and it was Stephanie. And this is also in the book. I sat down in front of the computer and I said, "What took you so long? I've been waiting for you." And I had been. She was on my mind. And she told me about Tom. And I said, "Well, Tom's not going to die. Tom's going to live through this." And from that time onward, I had made a psychic mental link with Tom. And Tom was in a coma for 8 months.
Wow.
And in that and he went into septic shock 7 times. I thought at that point I was going to be helping Stephanie get through. I thought I was going to be coaching her through the crises, which I often do in my work. I thought that's what I was going to be doing. And I did. I did. However, I never considered that I would do that, have that psychic link with Tom, but I did. And I knew what was going on with Tom 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I knew where he was when he was in septic shock. I knew what was going on. I felt many of the things he was going through. I knew when his vital signs were changing for the good or the bad. I knew when he was having trouble. I knew what he needed. I also knew that he was aware and could hear people speak. He was in a fog, he was in a coma, but he could hear people speak. Stephanie, what they were in Germany, and Stephanie's contemporaries were telling her, plan the funeral. Tom's going to die. And Stephanie, she and I talked, and Stephanie said, I don't know. I just can't sit here and do nothing. And I said to her, in your lifetime, in your career, what you're going through right now, you have experienced similar things like this hundreds of times, not exactly the same, but similar. And you've solved them. And you can solve this. You can find it. You can find a cure. And she decided she was going to find a cure and save her dying husband. This is a true story. This is a real story. And by the way, she found a cure. She just took her scientific mind as a famed researcher and put it to work outside the box. And she was using every method she could. And eventually, this became a worldwide project with scientists, some of the greatest minds on the planet got involved with finding the cure for this superbug. Yeah. Yes, it was like a world group.
Although it's almost as if he gave up his body and to go through that experience in order to help humanity in the future.
Well, he did actually. And he did, but that's another story. That's at the end of the story. So, but no one was thinking that he was going to live. Well, me. So I've done work like this before, and I don't really talk about it a lot. And I never really have reassessed or assessed what I've done or how I do it. I've just done it. Stephanie and I had a Skype meeting every day. And one of the things that, and I'm not as aware enough to understand and wasn't to understand the scope of the team that I was on. I just didn't understand. And I was maybe egotistical. I thought it was only me. I was really afraid that I was going to make a mistake and cause Tom to die. I was really afraid of that. And I was really hesitant with the things that I was saying and how I was saying them. And Stephanie said, and I finally told her that I was so afraid of answering these questions for fear, that I was going to be wrong. And she said to me, you have to tell me exactly what you see.
Yes.
Because you're not the only one. She said, I have advisors all over the world. And it's very important for you to tell me what you actually see with no punches pulled, so that I can take that information and compare it with the other people that have given me everything clear. And I make the decision, not you.
So she's taking that weight off your shoulders.
Absolutely. And I went, oh, and that was the first time in my life, the pressure was off me. And it was the first time in my life I just let it happen. The other thing about Stephanie is that she has a mind like Sheldon Cooper, the guy in the Big Bang Theory, the genius that has the, right? She's got a brain like this guy. She's got a memory like this guy. And every day before I gave her information, she did a replay of the information that I had given her this week, that week, and a recap every day. And I was astonished at how good I am at it. It at the time, I was just doing it because we were all in a crisis. But afterwards, I had uh, I didn't miss anything big. I like you know, like anything that I missed was like, you know, he's got a broken toenail or something, right? Like,
And how did that make you feel? How did that help you?
um,
Because they must
I
have been helping you as you were helping them. In a way, it was the most beautiful symbiotic relationship.
well, we weren't even talking about that. It was all about saving Tom. It wasn't about any of us. Now, Stephanie put together a group of scientists around the world. It was a world collaboration. World governments got involved. And anyway, Tom eventually got medevac back to California. And Stephanie went on her quest to find the cure. And I was with her the whole time. Well, okay, so I can say that I was not the star of the show. That I was not. My role, had I not been doing my role on 3 different occasions, Tom would have died. But there were other people that did far more than me. But when it was my turn, you know, when it was my turn, had I not been there, Tom would have died. And one of those times was in Germany, and he'd only been there a little while, and he was getting cold. He was sick. He didn't know where he was, and everybody around him was wearing hazmat suits, and he just did not understand what was happening, and he was starting to let go. And the way I knew that Tom was going to be okay, or when he wasn't okay, was I put it in my mind. I visualized a candle, a burning candle, much like one of those, actually, a burning candle. And when he was okay, the flame was strong. When he was in trouble, the flame was flickering. So this one day, you know, the flame was flickering, and I thought, holy shit, it's going out. And I said to Stephanie, Tom needs to see his daughters. Yesterday would have been a good day. Today's okay. Tomorrow's not so good. And if they wait longer, don't bother coming. And again, that's how I presented it. And by the way, he was in crises. It wasn't like I just invented that shit and then waited, you know, and there was nothing going on. He was in crises, and all this, you know, alarm bells were ringing and everything. He was dying. Anyway, that night, his daughters arrived. Like, they just got on a plane and they flew over, jumped on a plane and left. And they showed up, and I knew they got there because the flame got strong again. So anyway,
tell me, I want to interrupt you. Why did you get emotional then, Robert? What filled your heart then?
The humility of saving a life, that
Making me cry.
but that happens to me several times a year. Like, it's like what I said. Tom and Stephanie's stuff was the loudest, the biggest. I do things like that all the time. But also, I do things like that in my everyday life without. So another example of something like that happened a few years ago, and I was going to the dentist.
No, but before we get there, everybody's waiting. I want to know. So then, okay, So
Okay, so anyway, he lived. All right. So Stephanie narrowed it down to three things. And she ran everything by me anyway. And she started off, she said, I've narrowed it down and we got to act because, Tom's dying. And she said, I can't find any more. And she said, and the one that we pick, we're just going to have to go. And if it's the wrong one, that's it. And she said, I've narrowed them down to three things. And she said, now the first one is something called phages. And I said, that's the one. And she said, well, there's two others. And I said, that's the one. And she said, there's two others. And I said, that's the one. And then so she said, I'm going to tell you the two others. And I said, okay. And she told me. And then she said, what do you think? And I said, the first one is the one. And then she said, why? And now I didn't know what phages were or are. I didn't know. And then she asked me why. And I said, because I'm thinking of little Pac-Man going after the superbug and eating it. That's how I see what happens. And Stephanie said, that's exactly what happens. And she had talked to everybody. She still wasn't ready to make her decision, but on, like 25 other people. And then that last bit of information, and she made the decision to go with phages. Do you know what phages are? They are harvested from unfiltered sewer water. And phages are excrement. Yep, excrement. And the shit. And the concept is they take the healthy virus or healthy virus or healthy bacteria and introduce it to the unhealthy bacteria, and the healthy one will eat or kill the unhealthy one. In the 1930s, 1920s, right up until just about the 1940s, there was all kinds of research in phage therapy. And what they were doing is they were injecting fresh stool inside someone's, I guess rectally, they would be inject fresh stool in someone who has, say, bowel cancer or things like that. and they were making progress. And then penicillin got invented.
Yeah.
So then when you're at the point of, you get to have a pill or a turd, everyone went for the pill. So they stopped the experiments, So
oh dear. Oh, you're funny.
so anyway, she chose that. And then came the process of getting it brought into the country, America, getting it approved, going through the FDA. And meanwhile, here's this guy in a coma dying. The story like that. And the book, it's called The Perfect Predator. And it's written, the publishing company chose to eliminate about 95% of my contribution to that book. And they chose to focus mostly on the science. And then when I was reading the book, it was, if I hadn't have been a part of it, I would have thought that this was bullshit, because everything was literally, if at the very last minute, if that wasn't done, Tom would have died. Like there were about 100 last minutes if that hadn't happened. Like it was, it was like it's like one of those old fashioned movies, the Serial, where they leave you where the heroes hanging over the cliff by a dandelion or something, right? Well, that's what was going on with Tom for real. So anyway, Tom was injected with and he was the first human to be injected with the phages. And by the way, laboratories around the world got involved, and the U.S. Army, the U.S. Navy also had been doing experimental in phage treatment, and everybody was waiting for the opportunity for this to happen. They got approval from the FDA. Tom was the first person ever to be injected, and he was about 4 or 5 hours away from death. If nothing would have been done, he would have died. He was that close. They injected him with phages, and the doctors did not know whether that was going to kill him or not. And they were afraid to give it to him earlier because they were afraid it would kill him, and they didn't want to, get hung out for killing this guy. Anyway, that night he got infected, or injected, not infected. And within a very short amount of time, his vital system started getting stronger. And then they hit him again with another shot. And then he got stronger and stronger, and they injected him throughout the night. The next morning, Stephanie was at the hospital, and she was with Tom. And he'd been in a coma for 8 months. And when she was at his side, he opened his eyes and looked at her, and he came out of his coma. He woke up and looked at her, and then his eyes closed and he fell asleep. He didn't go into a coma. He never went back into a coma again. And over time, he rebuilt his life.
Did he ever chat with you? Did he have a conversation with you at any stage after that?
I still am in contact with them. What we went through together is a bond that, stay in touch. So Tom, so I'm still I'm still their psychic. I'm still their counselor. So I was involved in all the way along from that Christmas, and so I also told her there'd be a book. I also said there's going to be a movie. I believe they're just about to sign.
Wow.
Anyway, that was The Perfect Predator. So that was the biggest one I've ever been in. But I've done others that are equal.
Do you know, Robert, while you were talking, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. It's just absolutely fascinating. And a lot of stuff went through my mind as you were talking about them. And when you said that he was sort of captured and he'd lost all that weight, almost starving, to me, it's not surprising that he then buffered himself up and put all that weight on so that he wouldn't go through that starving again.
Well, now, one of the things that Stephanie insisted on, because she believed that Tom would have insisted on it because they're both scientists, right? And she said, the first thing, if he lives and comes out of his coma, the first thing he's going to say is, did you record this? So he is 001, patient 00001. Now, since that time, there has been research done, and this has changed the way medicine has been treating, well, first the superbug, but other things as well. And since that time, now I predicted all this stuff too. And that eventually what they're going to be doing is harvesting other types of viruses or bacteria that will attack a cancer cell and eat that. And they're doing experiments with that now too.
So why doesn't somebody come to you for this common problem we have at the moment?
With what? I'm sorry, with what?
With COVID.
Well, there's nothing I can do about that. I didn't have anything to do with finding the cure. What I had a lot to do with was looking after Tom and Stephanie. I wasn't doing the other stuff. My job was to look after Tom and Stephanie. I don't have a mind that would think in that way towards the medicines or.
Okay.
My job is like, diving in the water and pulling them out.
And what is so clear is that none of us do this alone. You couldn't be who you are unless you had people to come and see you, because what would you do with those skills? So we need them, they need us. So we all work together. And while you were telling me, it reminded me of when I was a real estate agent. And I had a client from America who was wanting to buy a house in the ski village. And he got to the stage where he was now ready to make an offer on a house. And he came in to speak to me. And I said, I can't continue with this contract. And he said, why not? I said, because you're not well. And he said, what on earth are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with me. I said, you're not well and you need to go and see a doctor. Now, I mean, that sounds bizarre, right? He ended up going to see a doctor, and it was so much so that his wife sent his manager from America, because he had a big business there, to actually escort him home. But when he got home, they lived on a ranch. And while he was there, not very, very soon after he was there, he went out to the barn in the early morning and then went back inside to find that his wife had collapsed in the bathroom, had a massive heart attack, did incredible damage to her heart. And if he hadn't been there, she would have died. While he was there and he'd gone through ICU and everything with her, and she was recovering, and then they got home, and then he had to take her in for therapy. As he was driving into town, he started feeling pain down his left arm and through his chest. And he didn't want to tell her because he didn't want then her to have that stress. So no sooner had he got her into the doctor's room than he went to the receptionist and said, I've got a problem, and collapsed. And they sorted him out there and then. Now, what it would have happened if I hadn't been told that not to, sign the contract and carry on with business as usual. And he said to me afterwards, when he came back, at the time he said, but what about the house? And I said, well, it doesn't matter about the house. If the house is supposed to be there, it'll work out. There'll always be another house.
Right, yes.
Yeah, and he ended up coming back and buying that house. So I just think to myself, none of us know, and some people maybe would never say that, wouldn't want to be taking the chance of somebody thinking they're weird, saying to somebody, look, you're ill and you need to go and see a doctor. I mean, why would a real estate agent really say that to her client? And look at the ramifications if that wasn't followed through.
She would have died.
So and that's why when you got emotional, I started getting emotional, because immediately that story came to.
You realize, yes.
Yes.
What does that feel like when you know that the action that you chose to do saved a life? What happens?
It's so humbling.
Yeah.
You realize how fragile everything is. So we have to be who we are.
Yeah.
We have to stop hiding in the spiritual closet. It's time to step out and say, this is who I am. No more hiding.
I haven't.
Hey.
Have you?
I kept quiet for years because I didn't want to be
weird,
rejected.
Right.
And I was in real estate, setting stuff up with all these business clients. Yeah. the very first time it happened to me, I'd had a terrible ski accident, and that's when I was taken inside the human body and shown how the energy system works. And it was really fascinating while I was having an MRI. And then after that, after the operation, I ended up having a near-death experience. And then things changed for me again. And when I arrived in our ski village, we moved from a big city. And I started working as a real estate agent at that stage. And when I had the near-death experience, I was told, it's not your time yet, you've got a job to do, you've got work to do. But I wasn't quite sure what it was. So when I arrived here and I got the job as a real estate agent, and I ended up going about 11 Ks out of town to this place and asking a woman to put letters in a whole lot of letter boxes, and she was very rude to me, and I couldn't understand why, because everybody was so great here. And then I've learned that the only people that are rude are those that are unhappy, right? They just reactive. And as I was falling asleep that night, she was standing in front of at the bottom of my bed with her father. And her father was dressed in British tweeds, and he was riding in a horse. And then I saw her icing a wedding cake, and they said to me, she's not going to ice wedding cakes, but she's a very creative being, and she's not doing anything creative. And that she bought the business to impress her dad, to get her father's love, because her father had always rejected her and treated her abysmally. And they told me that humanity are born to appease themselves and not to appease others. And you've got to put yourself first, because then you will come from that solid, joyous, decent, fabulous giving, and you won't live with resentment and anger and frustration. And they said that she needed to sell that business, and if she didn't, she would basically be dead at the end of the year, because she would literally die of a heart attack from a broken heart. And they showed me that he used to rein her in like an animal, like reining in the horse, and that nothing that she did or could do would ever appease her father. It was his problem, not hers, right? And so she was then living for somebody else. She wasn't living for herself. So the question is, who do you live for? What do you live for? And why do you live? So I found my car driving to park outside her business, and the voice in my head saying, you've got to do your job. And I stood in front of her and I said, I have a message for you. She said, who from? And I thought, this is the first time. And I said, from my head. And I told her, it's like it's a movie and this is what I saw. And she said to me, how do you know my father's British? I said, because of the tweeds, the British tweeds, like Andy cap that he was wearing, right? And she said, where do you get this information from? I said, I have no idea how it works. This is the first time it's happened. I said, it's like watching a movie. And then she said to me, well, you're 100% correct. And that's when I started shaking, because I realized I'm a brand new person in town. I'm a real estate agent. I've come out and told her this stuff. I could have been known as the utter nutter, because in a little town stuff goes through very quickly, right? Like a wildfire. I saw her, and then she just said nothing that I've ever done, and she went blah, 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 and she told me everything about her dad. And then I left. I saw her a few months later in the supermarket getting groceries. She looked like a different person. It was just incredible. And she said to me, oh, it's you. I mean, we didn't even know each other's names. And she said to me, I want you to know that I've enrolled in an art class in Auckland. I've sold the business and I've bought a property mortgage free, and I have never felt so free in my life. Well, it made me so nervous. It made me happy as well. And then I spoke to my guides, call it whatever you like. And I said, how do I know how to interpret stuff? And you know what they said? It's not for you to interpret.
That's right.
You will receive it from us, and you will just give the message. It's for the receiver to know what it is.
Okay. So this is sort of more extreme. Okay. So, but you're saying then the information that you give is coming from your spirit guides and you're giving it verbatim?
As I see it, sorry.
As you see it, okay.
As I see it, as I see the movie playing,
okay.
I then tell them what I see. For example, one lady came to see me, and I said to her, I keep seeing fields, and there is a man coming to visit you, and there's a fence line and a fence line, and I just keep on seeing this fence line, and he's leaning on the posts and the fence line. Okay. So it didn't make sense to me. And she said, okay. Oh, my father is a fencer.
Right. Okay. So in a little technical way, in order for that information to come to you,
yes,
through the spirit or spirit, and what they do is they use your mind, your body, your brain, and you personally are the medium rather than a deck of tarot cards. So you are personally the medium, and the information comes through from them, and it also gets processed by you. So the more experience you have, the broader awareness you have of life, the easier or the more ways you'll be able to share that information. But you can only give the information that comes in from your source. Yes. What holds you back, what limits that, is the amount of information that you have in your mind to compare it to. So when that information, so if you've never heard of E equals MC squared,
then you can't tell them about EMC.
Then you can't tell them about it. Okay. So that's one of the reasons that when you're giving information, no matter what you think it is to give it in an open-ended way. You don't complete it, just let them think. The other thing is about being right or being wrong.
That's the biggest thing, you see. You don't, I've only ever charged 2 or 3 times in my life for all the readings that I've done, because I thought, well, if I didn't charge and it wasn't 100% accurate, then there was no comeback. And then it started putting too much pressure on me. I put it on myself.
And everybody becoming and taking from you, we're not giving anything back.
So I stopped doing it.
And if you were off or wrong, or if, and what I was going to say here's something else about being wrong. But if you were wrong on whatever, then they say, oh well, she's not very good, that's why she doesn't charge. So when you minimize your value, they will too. And free advice is worth what you pay for it. All right. So now you're going to buy a new house and blah, 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 blah. 5 years later, somebody comes up to me and says, you told me I was going to buy a house, but I didn't. You were wrong. Maybe. Or maybe what happened is they said, we don't want to buy a house. So what I've done is shown them an option, and they chose not to do it. So I wasn't wrong. I showed them what can happen how they can do it, and they say, no, I'm not going to do it.
So then that's just up to them. That's free will.
That's free. That's correct. So when I give that information when I'm doing a reading, I'll say, oh, and if you haven't moved by, May 23rd, 2023, it's because you had the opportunity and you chose not to do it.
Okay, so now I want to change the subject completely, and I want to ask you, do you ever ask questions for yourself? And with all the troubles going through the world at the moment, and all the governments having problems and everybody being shut down, do you ever say, what is this world going to look like in 2 to 3 years' time?
No. I haven't. I've stopped watching the news per se. I listen to it on the radio sometimes. I've stopped watching the news because it upsets me. And whatever is going on in the news, I can't do anything about it. I can't. I can't solve the pandemic. I can't solve world hunger. I can't create world peace. I can help the person in front of me.
There you go.
Okay. I can feed the hungry person right in front of me. I can give money to the beggar on the corner. That's what I can do.
So you just deal with what you can do with. Now, being homeless at one stage of your life, what is the message that you would like to share with all the people listening about what could they do and what's the best thing to do when they see a homeless person?
Be kind. Treat that person with dignity. Be nice to that person. They didn't say, oh, I'm just going to fuck my life up and live on the street and eat out of a garbage can. Like, nobody makes that decision. That happens. And it gives you the opportunity to prove you're a really good person. And it'll give you the opportunity to develop your empathy. I have fun with people on the street begging for money. I have fun with them. I go back to the neighborhood that I lived on the streets. I go back to it often, and I give money out, and I do it a lot. I give out coins, but before I do, I have a conversation with the person, and I play, but I play with them in a respectful, kind, and dignified way. One time I was walking by a guy, he was sitting on the ground, cross-legged, and he had an empty coffee cup in his hand, on the ground. And as I was walking by, I know all the answers, but as I was walking by, I was, sort of put on a show. I was walking by and I slowly looked at the coffee cup, and then I stopped and I walked back. And then I looked down at the coffee cup, and I looked at the guy sitting down, and I said to him, excuse me, sir, is that your cup? And he said, well, yeah, what about it? And I said, well, what do you use it for? And he said, to put money in it. And I looked in the cup and I said, you're not doing very well today. And he said, no, I'm just having a bad day. And I said, I think I can help you. So I have my coins I put them in plastic bags, and there's usually anywhere between 25 and $30 per coin in bags of coins, right? And they're in loonies and $1 coins and $2 coins. And I reached in my pocket and I said, this might make your day a little bit better. And I handed it to him. And he looked at the coins and he was shocked. And I walked away laughing, you know? And I turned back and he looked at me and he smiled and he had that money. And you know what it was? It was, he had the day off now.
He had the day off.
He had, yeah. There was another time, I remember, there was another time, it happened, it would have been December of the year, and we were having a blizzard come in. And there's a stoplight that leads to a bridge that separate the Don Valley and separates Toronto. There's a big bridge. And I was at the traffic light, and there was this guy, and it was like the blizzard was starting, the snow was coming down, and it was really cold. And this guy was walking around, going up to cars, and begging for money. And this guy could have played Igor in a Frankenstein movie with no makeup. Guy had a hunchback, you know, his arm was all, you know, he's wobbling around, he had long, greasy hair, you know, his frontal lobes were sticking out. He looked like a monster, like, you know, and he had both his pant legs rolled up. And there's this blizzard and it's freezing temperature. So I rolled down my window and I yelled to the guy and I said, "Hey, buddy, pull your pant legs down." And he said, "Go fuck yourself." And I said, "All right, I'll give you $10 if you do." And his pant legs were down around his ankles in a second, and he was over at my car waiting for the $10, and I gave him the $10, and I said, "Thank you," you know, and I laughed all the way. Another time, this one's really touching. There's a hot dog stand that I used to go to more than 50 years ago, where I would, and the same family that owned it then still own it. And I go back to that neighborhood, and every time I go back there, I always get a hot dog. And, you know, I brought my kids there for hot dogs, and it's, you know, it's a family business. This one night, I was ordering my hot dog, and I was leaning up against the wall. I'm a street guy, right? put the wall on my back. And I what was going on, and I was looking down this way, and the dirtiest kid I've ever seen in my life was walking up the street. Now, when I say kid, remember, at the time I was probably mid-60s. So, you know, somebody 30's a kid, you know, when you're that age, right? So anyway, the dirtiest kid I've ever seen. This kid came walking up to me, and he said, "Excuse me, sir, can you spare $1?" And I said, $1? What do you want for $1? And he said, "Do you really want to know the truth?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Well, if you want your $1, you're going to have to tell me the truth. What do you want this for?" And he says, "To buy drugs." And I said, "For $1? Who's your dealer and what are you getting?" You know, he said, "Well, I want some marijuana." I said, "For $1? And he said, "Well, no, it's a start." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I reached in and brought out one of my bags. And I handed it to this kid. Like, well, actually, I handed it kind of, you know, like this, right here, with my fingertips, because he was really dirty. And I handed it to him, and he took it, and he looked at me, and he said, "Are you looking for a date?" And I said, right?
Ooh, you're hitting on the toy boys.
Right. And I said to him, "No, man, that's really okay. No, I'm not looking for a date." And he said, "Why did you give this to me?"
Oh.
And I said, "Because you're worth it." And he started to get teary-eyed. He went to hug me. I said, "Oh, it's okay, man. It's okay. I got this thing about being touched, but I appreciate it." And he got teary-eyed, and it really affected him. And he started to walk away. And I said, "Excuse me, I think I can help you a little bit more. Come over here." And he came over, and I reached in my pocket and pulled out a couple of joints and handed them to him. For the marijuana joints. And there you go. So I do that all the time.
And you never told him that you were once that yourself?
No.
No.
I was just helping him in that moment.
Oh,
he just had the day off, the time off, the week off, that moment in time. So, and I've changed my perception and how I see people that are poor and begging. They're at work. They're doing their job. They're working.
So you would never get all of them together and maybe give them all a reading and maybe give them some hope or direction?
I give them something to read. They don't care what's going to happen tomorrow or next month or next year. Have I got something to eat now?
Yeah.
Is there a place I can go to the bathroom?
So something that I've always thought, every time I see beggars or homeless people, to me, I've always thought, give them food.
Yeah.
Rather than money. Like give them
food. Then give them food.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. You still get points for it. Like you don't, okay, so the points, right? Hey, listen, oh yeah, I gave the guy $50. No, I gave him 3 sandwiches. I get more points. No, you just get points for doing it.
And you don't do it to get points. You do it because it touches your heart.
That's correct.
You know,
no, I was just saying, like what I was saying is if you give food and I give money, it's equal. It doesn't matter. You're giving.
Yeah. Well, what you're really doing is you're recognizing that they exist.
Absolutely. So, and when I give them the money, I don't put a condition on it. I'm giving this to you if you do this, or I'm giving this to you if you don't buy booze or drugs. I'm giving this to them, and they can use it how they wish. If they use it to buy drugs, great, they didn't rob somebody. If they do it to buy food, great, they're going to stay warmer tonight. So it's not my business what they do. What I'm giving them is time to be safe.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. Well, it's now an hour and a half later.
Oh, really? It feels like we just started.
Time just flies. So is there any last thing that you would like to share that you think people need to know at this time, that will help people, that might help people that are on the way to do the kind of work that you do, and anything that you can, any pitfalls that they can avoid, or do you know what I mean? Just a few words of advice. Seeing as you're such an old boy and you've been doing it for so long.
It's really simple.
Yes.
Do good, be safe, and above all, just be kind.
Just be kind. And Robert,
yes,
they can listen to your podcasts, can't they?
Oh yes, it's called My Side of the Crystal Ball, and I decided to do this because I don't know that many psychics, and I don't know that many people that do this work, and I seem to have a lot of knowledge. I'm really happy about sharing it, but I'm also really interested in hearing how other people are doing their work. And so my side of the crystal ball is to find all those people. And it's really been a lot of fun. I had some very unique people on.
Well, I tell you,
a friend of yours recently was on.
Michelle.
Yes, of course.
Isn't she a doll?
She is wonderful.
I love her. She's such a straight shooter, that one.
She is.
Well, I think
she was great on the show. She was great.
She was good.
stole the show. Yeah, she stole the show. Everybody loved her.
Oh, I'm so glad.
My producer called me the night when they were doing when they were editing. And she phoned me and she said, "Wow, that girl in the experts chair. Wow, she was wonderful. She was brilliant." And I said, "Oh yeah, that's Michelle."
Yeah, Michelle Carpenter. Yeah, she's a brilliant psychic medium, or call it whatever you like. And she does energy work, and she just gets right to the core. And once again, she does it differently. You know, we all do it differently.
Of course.
It's fabulous. So there might be people that are listening today that are
Mhm.
experts in a different way that could contact
Absolutely.
you.
Of course. Of course. I still do readings, and I will until I die or till I can't do them anymore.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be when I die. I'm still doing readings, still love to, not nearly as much as I'm not doing nearly as much as I used to, but I'm still working regularly. I'm still, a lot of my work is, crisis intervention. Um, what's today? Wednesday? Yeah. A woman that I was in contact with or she was in contact with me on Monday, when we were talking on Skype. She was going to kill herself. So, she's been my project since Monday, and she's still alive. So I guess we must be successful. And I have projects like that all the time too.
Well, Robert, once again, such a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. You're just such a cherub.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. It's very,
Yeah, no, I enjoy you. I just enjoy you. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll definitely have Robert on again, and you know where to get hold of him. And I'll leave his details on the bottom of this chat.
I love to hear from people. I love to hear them. I like to hear them. When they talk and say hello to me and stuff. I love it.
Awesome. So cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.